On the 28th of June 1919, the Treaty of Versailles was eventually signed. Now, the treaty had input from 27 nations. Importantly to note, Germany was excluded from these nations, and the leaders of it were the US, French, British, Italy, and Japan. However, both the Italians and the Japanese withdrew. This left the British, French, and US. Now, the French and US both pursued a course of harsh peace, and the treaty which was signed resulted in 13% of territory lost for the Germans and 10% of their population. And importantly, it also included reparations. In today's money, these reparations totaled to $390 billion, and it was signed in the Hall of Mirrors within the Treaty of Versailles. Now, this was significant because this was the same location that the new German or Prussian Empire was declared in 1871, after France had been defeated by the Prussians. Also interesting to note, the US never ratified the Treaty of Versailles, and the US never joined the League of Nations, which was one of the key cornerstones of the treaty. In November 1923, Hitler and fellow National Socialists staged a failed coup d'etat in Munich. This was known as the Beer Hall Putsch. Hitler was then put on trial and was sentenced on the 1st of April 1924. Now, he was imprisoned for a period of 5 years, but was released within 9 months on the 20th December 1924. Now, whilst he was in jail, Hitler wrote his book Mein Kampf. This was released and published on the 18th of July 1925. Now, Mein Kampf became a bestseller, and it also became the cornerstone of Nazi doctrine and dogma. The Beer Hall Putsch, despite it being a failure and Hitler going to prison, was an unintentional, huge publicity success for the Nazi Party. Not only did it publicize the actual Nazi Party itself, which only had about 20,000 members, it also gave prominence to their ideals, and this was further enforced with the publication of Mein Kampf. Now, Mein Kampf, although it wasn't particularly well written, is important because it is Hitler's thoughts and ideals thrown up and codified onto paper. Now, with hindsight, we're able to tell what the Nazi Party's intentions were just by looking at Mein Kampf, which was anti-Jewish, anti-Slavic, and would set Germany and the rest of the world on course for another global conflict. By the end of 1933, the Nazi Party had secured their place in power and made themselves the only political party within Germany. By 1935, rearmament had well and truly started, but it was on the down low. They didn't do it overtly, as this was in direct violation of the Treaty of Versailles. So the Nazis, they would use commercial aircraft to train pilots, and they'd use commercial shipping to train their sailors. Perhaps the first international move which the Nazis physically did was the annexation of Austria. Now, this was part of the Nazi Party's manifesto, the reunification of all German-speaking people, and it was in direct violation, again, of the Treaty of Versailles. But, as you can see from this British Pathé News clip on your screen, they were welcomed. In the summer of 1938, German aggression towards Czechoslovakia resulted with the international community, headed by British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain, flying to Berlin to seek further guarantees that Germany would not invade the rest of Europe. This resulted in parts of Czechoslovakia being handed over to the Germans. Unfortunately, this only emboldened Germany and reinforced Hitler's opinion that neither Britain nor the French had the will or resource to fight German aggression. And on the 15th of March 1939, Prague was occupied by Nazi troops. On the 23rd of August 1939, the unthinkable really happened. This was the Nazi and Soviet pact being signed. This was because, ideologically, that should never have happened. Hitler, in Mein Kampf, had written down that the true enemies of Nazism, of National Socialism, were the communists. However, the signing of the pact had several benefits for both the Nazis and the communists. The Soviet Nazi pact guaranteed security for Germany's eastern frontier and for the Soviet Union's western frontier. This would allow the Nazis to conduct military operations in Western Europe, free from fear of being invaded from the east. and it also allowed the Soviets the opportunity to rebuild its military. In addition to this, it saw cooperation economically, with raw materials from the Soviet Union being exported to the Nazis, and the Nazis exporting precision engineering, such as tools and aircraft parts, to the Soviet Union. On the 3rd of September 1939, Britain and France declared war on Nazi Germany. This was because 2 days previously, the Nazis had invaded Poland. 20th of June 1919, the Treaty of Versailles was signed and agreed by Germany. On the 1st of April 1924, after a failed coup attempt, Hitler was imprisoned. He was sentenced to 5 years, but only served 9 months. During his time in prison, he wrote Mein Kampf, My Struggle. This was then released to the general population and became a bestseller. It was in no part attributed to the Nazi Party gaining 33.1% of the vote. Then in 1934, Hitler becomes Führer and makes it illegal for any other political party to exist. Then by 1935, which was against the Treaty of Versailles, he overtly starts rearming Germany. The 12th of March 1938, Austria is annexed, again a direct violation of the Treaty of Versailles. Then in 30th September 1938, the Munich crisis occurs. This is when, following a summer of aggressive moves against Czechoslovakia, European leaders agree that Germany should have control of the Sudetenland, which is part of Czechoslovakia. The policy of appeasement, which Neville Chamberlain followed, failed. Now, despite being appeased through being granted the Sudetenland, Hitler then proceeded to occupy Prague, again in violation of the Treaty of Versailles. Then on 23rd of August 1939, the Soviet-Nazi Pact was signed. Then, 9 days later, Germany invaded Poland, and this triggered Britain and France to declare war on Germany.